Hi everyone, and welcome back to our virtual art classes. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's video and the last session. And thank you guys for all the great feedback you gave me. I will try to incorporate that feedback into this week's video. So once again, once you get through this activity, let me know if you have any suggestions on how I can make it better, and that'll be greatly appreciated. So let's get right into it. This week what we're going to do is, since it's mid-November, I thought it'd be fitting if we focus on the winter theme. And we've been doing a lot of work with blending, creating skies, backgrounds, and also a lot of work on painting trees. So I thought we could bring all those skills together, and we're going to do a nice winter landscape. And we're going to try to still make it colorful and vibrant even though it's winter. So we'll keep the snow to a minimum in this painting. And as always, I'll be guiding you guys throughout the entire process. So from drawing to mixing colors to painting to blending, everything, we're going to do it together. So yeah, let's get right into it. Let's do it. Okay, so let's get set up. So we're going to need pretty much the same supplies we've been using as before. We're going to need our paint brushes, our paints obviously, a cup for water, some plates for mixing, a rag, and also a pencil. Once again, I'll be using a Sharpie so you guys can see what I'm doing. You guys will need a pencil and maybe an eraser. And that's it. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to get yourself set up, and then we're going to get right into the art. Okay, before we start, I'm just going to quickly recap exactly what we're going to do and the process that we're going to take. So we're going to start with our drawing, and what we're going to do is essentially we're going to draw this mountain line, we're going to draw the ground, where the ground is, we're going to draw this little river here, and we're going to draw pretty much just the trunk of the tree. We're not going to draw the entire tree and all the branches. We're going to add that after we do our background. So the drawing portion will just be these few elements. Once we have that, we're going to work on our background, which is going to start with the sky. We'll do the snow after that. Then we will add the mountains. Then we'll add the river. And the very last thing that goes is the tree. Okay, so when it comes to drawing, first thing I like to do is I like to identify a few anchor points, kind of figure out where I'm going to have the sky end and the ground begin. And then once I map those out, we can go ahead and start drawing it. So first thing I want to do is I want to find out where the sky will end, essentially. So this mark right there, this area right here, I want to be able to find this area on my paper here. So how do we do that? There's a few different ways. What I like to do is I always like to start off by kind of just dividing my page where I need to into halves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little mark right here that's going to represent the halfway point of my page on this vertical line here. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to translate that onto this paper right here. So I'm going to eyeball it. Basically, I'm just going to guess where halfway is, and then I'm just going to make a little mark on the tape right there. So I know that's about my halfway point, and now that I have that, it's easier for me to find these points here, this point here, now that I know where my halfway is. So I know that this is half my page, and I know that this line is going to be just over a third of this space right here. So I can take that onto this page now. I know that this is my halfway point, and I know if I go about a third of the way down from this space here, that's gonna give me the top of my mountains. So this is just one way of kind of mapping out a drawing. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see, okay, so I have the top of my mountains, I need the bottom of my mountain. So I can see that in reference to the rest of this space here, it's about halfway in between. So about a quarter of the page is gonna give me the bottom of my mountain. So once again, I'll go to my page. I will have the halfway mark, and then I'm gonna come halfway to the middle of that, and there we go. So we have those two areas marked down, so we know that the top of our mountain, the bottom of our mountain, and then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side of our page. So once again, I'm going to come here, I'm going to eyeball the halfway point, and then I'm going to make these marks, and I can see that they're pretty much almost in the same spot, except this on the right side, the mountains are a little bit smaller. So what I'll do is I'm gonna do the same thing. I'll eyeball my halfway point. It's right there. And then I can come down about a third of the way there. And I know this is gonna be the top of my mountain. So I have my halfway point, a third of the way down from that. And then I can see that the thickness of my mountain on this image is gonna be thinner. So I'm just gonna eyeball that now. So instead of making it, you know, this looks like maybe 1.25 inches, I'm gonna make it just under 1 inch long. So now I have my 4 points for my horizon line and my mountain range. So the other thing I'm gonna need at this point now is to identify where that line goes. So it's not a straight line, so it's gonna dip down, and I can see that the lowest point is right there. I'll make a little X there so you guys can see it's right there where the river is. So I want to find this point on this page. So I'm not going to make it much more of a grid now because I can kind of eyeball it. I know that this point is lower than this line that we have, and it's lower than that line that we have. So very simply I can just kind of come a little bit lower than those two lines. And I know that it's about halfway, maybe a little bit to the right of halfway. So if this is my halfway point, it's going to be right a little bit to the right of that. So I'll just make up a halfway point, and then it's going to be just a little bit to the right of this. So I'm going to place my finger here, work my way up. I can see that this is, yes, a little bit to the left of my halfway point and a little bit below that line that I made. And I can say, okay, that is where the top of the river is going to be, and that's going to be the lowest part of the mountain. So now I have my marks, I have my lines. The rest of it, I can just improvise and freestyle. Let's go right for it. I'm going to start at this point, starting from the left side. I'm going to kind of swoop down a little bit, curve my line down and up, and then meet at this point. And now I can see as it comes back up, it kind of has a few curves here, a little bit of a slightly more dramatic upturn, and voila, there we go. Now I have the bottom line, so this is where the snow is, and that's where the snow meets the mountains. Now that I have that, I can draw the top of my mountain line. And you know what, we'll try this technique here because I can see that I can see the outline of the mountains. So I'm going to actually just kind of draw like that. So instead of just drawing a straight line across, I'm going to draw separate mountains. So what I'm going to do, I'll do the first two. So basically I'm going to start at that same point, but instead of going all the way across, I'm just going to dip down at some point and intersect with the lower line that we have, and that gives us the shape of a mountain, and we're just going to layer shapes of mountains on top of each other. So we'll start with this one. I'm going to start at the top of my mountain line. I'm going to kind of curve up a little bit, curve down a little bit, curve up a little bit, and then come down and meet that bottom line there. And I have the shape of a mountain. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do it one more time. Now the key is don't start again at that tip. Come a little bit lower down. So I'm going to start there now. I'm going to do a more smooth curve for this one, give it a little dip, and then same thing, come back down. And as you can see, I'm creating that sort of texture, that line that can represent the top of a mountain range, right? So same thing, let's go another one. There's 1, 2, 3, I guess there's 4 altogether. There's 4 more, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little shapes, okay? So let's just go for it. This is where you can add your own little bit of creativity. So if you want to make one hill bigger, make one hill smaller, go for it. So once again, I don't start right at the top here. I'm going to come further down. This mountain is in front of the mountain that I'm about to create, so that's why I kind of started a little bit lower. Create that curve, go in. Same thing, one more time, do a little bit of a different curve. And then for the final one is behind this one that we just painted. So I'm going to start from this edge and just kind of make a little squiggly line. And that's it. So now I have my mountain lines. And the good thing is that we separated the mountains, is that when we go to paint it, we can see where the separation is. So we can paint them all slightly different shades, and that will help us create that separation. So great. So we did that. Now that we're still in the bottom section, why don't we just go ahead and just fill in this river quickly. So with the river, I already have the mark for where the left side of the bottom of the river is. That's my halfway point. So I just need to find out where the right side of the bottom of the river is on my page. Very simply, it's just about 1.5 inches away from the left side. So just make a little mark right there. And I already have the top of my river over there. And now all I need to do is create a curved line to connect these three. So what I'm going to do is I'll try to add a little bit more perspective. So what I'll do is I'm going to come out to the left. Then I'm going to do a curve, and I'm going to come back out, down to the left. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm going to try to create some perspective by making the top smaller and narrower and making the bottom wider. That allows me to create that perspective. Because remember, the closer something is to us, the bigger it is. The further away it is, the smaller it is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the contours of this line. But as I work my way up, I'm going to narrow that gap in between the two. So watch, I'm going to come, narrow that gap, and bam. So it's just a funny looking shape, but that, once we paint it, will give us that perspective, okay? So once again, I'm following the contours of this line, but I'm shrinking the space in between as I go. So there we go. Now we have our river. Alright, and now the final step in our drawing is going to be the tree trunk. So I already kind of went and painted the mountains, that's fine. We're just basically going to identify where the bottom of our tree trunk is. So those two marks I just made, the left and the right side. And then we're just going to kind of eyeball how far we're going to go. Obviously, like I said, we're not going to paint the whole tree, we're just going to do the trunk. So I'll just come up to here where the branches start splitting up, and then do the same thing, kind of identify where the left side and the right side are. Once I have these four, I can just create the lines. So let's start with the bottom of the tree. It's very simple. I can kind of just eyeball it. I know that those spots is right below our line for the bottom of the mountain, so I can just come from there and just work my way down a little bit. And I also know it's pretty close to the left side of the page, and I know it's going to be a little bit wider than our river, or about as wide as our river. So I will just kind of go ahead. I'm going to make a little mark here. That's going to be the left side or the bottom of the tree, and I'll make another mark here about 1.5 inches away. That's going to be the right side of our tree. Now that we have that, we're going to do the same thing for the top of our trunk. And once again, I can see that I'm going to be below my halfway point, so be somewhere in this area right there. And I can see these lines are pretty much aligned with the bottom lines that these points are aligned with the bottom points that I have, but they're just shifted slightly to the right. So I'll just do the same thing. I'll start from here. I'll kind of come up and then just shift a little bit to the right, Same thing here, come up and just shift a little bit to the right. And now I have my 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will give me the basic shape of my tree trunk. But remember, nothing in nature is a straight line. So we always want to make sure we curve our lines, okay? So once again, I'm going to start with the left side. I'm going to curve to the right, make a little curve, and then come up. And then same thing here, I'm going to curve in a little bit, curve a little bit, and then come up, okay? So it should look a little wonky. If it does, that's good. That's nature. And then we're just going to connect the bottom. I'm going to give it a little bit of a bump here to show that there's some roots that are kind of covered by the snow. And great. So that's all I'm going to do for the tree trunk. We're going to leave the top open. And now that you're done drawing this, you can take your eraser and just kind of get rid of these mountain lines. I'm quickly just going to touch that up with some white paint so that we can see it. And that's it for the drawing. So you guys erase this. I'm going to cover it up in white and we can start painting. So take a few minutes and finish that off, and then we're going to get right into the painting. So let me quickly touch this up. That's why pencil is always great, because you can always erase it. So, but I'm just going to use a little bit of white paint for now. And there we go. We should be able to see that now. Our drawing is done. Let's start painting. So for our first 3 colors, we will be using yellow, red, and white. We don't need that much red, mostly yellow and a little bit of white. So go ahead, take a minute and get your paints on your palette. So to start, we're going to start creating the gradient in our sky. So we're going to start with our yellow, and we're going to work our way up to orange, and then we're going to work our way up to red, and so forth. So I like to start at the bottom of the mountains. We always start with the lightest color, which in this case will be yellow. And we're going to work our way up till about the halfway point right there. And once we get to that point, then we're going to set up our next gradient. So let's get started. First thing, move some yellow onto a different section of your plate, and then we're going to add a tiny bit of white. The reason we add the white is because yellow is very transparent, so we add the white to make it more opaque. And once you have your color, so it's just basically yellow with a little bit of white, we're going to start painting. So I like to put my brush on the tip of where I'm starting and press gently from there. So I'm going to start from the edge of the trees and work my way around the mountain tops. This is the first color we're putting on, so we don't need to be super careful with our edges and our lines, but it's always good practice as we use our brush to make sure that we're staying within the lines and controlling our paint. So let's go ahead we're just gonna create about an inch or two of just yellow, a yellow strip that's gonna go down across our painting. So let's go ahead, take a minute and do that. Okay, and yeah, just about an inch, not too much. And once we have that yellow, just smooth it out, make sure everything's good, and then we're gonna get to our next color. So take a minute and just finish that up. So now we're going to start with our next color, which is going to be a very, very yellowish orange. And the way we do that is, if you already have some of that yellow left with the white in it, we're just going to add a little bit of red to that. If you don't, just add a little, move some yellow onto a different part of your palette, and then add a little bit of white. And then with the red, as you can see, it's very little at a time. Remember, red is stronger than yellow. So if you want to make sure just a little bit at a time, I'm going to put a little bit on here just to test it out and see how it looks. I want it to be slightly different, and let's see if that's good. Yeah, that's okay, that works for me. So that's the color I'm going to go with. Same thing for you guys. When you're mixing that color, make sure that it's not too different. It should be one step above our yellow. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll give you guys a minute to mix your color and add your next strip. Now, once you've done that, the key is to do the blending. So remember, in order to blend, we need two wet colors that we can mix. So I'm gonna go ahead and just touch up and add a little bit more of that yellow underneath that line. So I'm just gonna go with my brush with just that original yellow and just work it in where those two colors meet. And by just moving my brush back and forth, you can see I'm kind of getting rid of that line in between them and blending them smoothly. So you're gonna need your original yellow for this, and you're gonna need the new yellow orange that you mixed. And you just wanna, don't overdo it, don't go too far when you're blending, just a little bit on that line. And then once you're done, the key thing is knowing when to stop. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more yellow there, but once I have that color, I want to make sure I stop. That's really the key. So I'll let you guys take a minute and just finish that up, and then we're going to get on to the next color. So I'm just going to keep working this in a little bit. And there we go. I'm good with that. It's a nice smooth blend. And that bottom section where we just painted, we're not going to touch this anymore. So our next blend, we're only going to touch the top of that orange, and the rest of those colors we're not going to touch anymore because we have the perfect blend that we want. If you start touching it more and start messing around with it, we can mix it up. So let's mix our next color. So basically we're just going to keep adding red to that color that we have. So if you ran out of that color that you had, that orange that you had, just start again, take some yellow, add a little bit of white, and then add a little bit more red. So I already had some left over. I added a tiny bit of red to it, and now I'm just gonna see how that looks and see if that's the color that I want. I'm putting it on my paper, and yeah, it looks pretty good to me. It's a little bit more orangish, but not enough, which is good. This is what I want. It creates that blend. And I'm just gonna paint over the tree trunk a little bit too, and that's fine. Now if I saw there's a little bit too much orange there and I want to add some more yellow, I'm just going to mix some of that yellow again, just basically yellow and white.
and then apply that wherever it needs touch-ups. But by this stage, you should have about the first 3 inches of your sky painted, and it should just be going from a very nice pure yellow to a very light yellow orange. So I'll give everybody a minute to finish that off, and then we'll jump into the next color. Okay, so for the next color, make sure you clean your brush, and all we're gonna do is we're just gonna keep adding red. That's all we're doing at this stage. So I have some of that yellow or that orange left. If you don't, once again, mix it. It's a yellow and a little bit of white and a little bit of red. I already have some of that orange, so all I'm gonna do, once again, just keep adding red. As you can notice, I'm adding a tiny bit at a time. I'm not overdoing it. And I just want this to, yeah, there we go. Now that looks like a little bit more on the orange side, which is what I want. So once we have that color, we'll go ahead and just paint a nice 1-inch strip above where we just painted our last color. And one thing we want to remember when it comes to blending is that you want to do it fairly quickly, because the paint will dry, and once it dries, you have to like mix that color again and put it on the paper and then do the blend. So I just added that 1 inch of my new color, and now I'm just going, I have some of my old color left, the lighter orange. It's on my palette still. So once I added that 1 inch of my new orange, I'm just gonna go and take some of my lighter orange and just smooth it out and blend it and get rid of any of those harsh lines, and that's it. So it's really the same technique that we're using over and over again. Okay, let's get into the next color. So basically I'm adding more red. That's all I'm doing at this stage. Soon I'm going to start transitioning and adding some white, but at this stage I just want to add more red and get that color to be more orange. And yeah, that's good. So I have a slightly more orangish red, and just going to add that paint. Okay, so we're just gonna keep blending. So we're still going from orange, from yellow to orange, and as we're about halfway. This is kind of the halfway mark. I'm gonna make a little line here, so we're about halfway. This is where I want to kind of start transitioning from the red color into the blue and purple color. So now we're gonna step up our gradient and make it a little bit more dramatic. So what I'm gonna do is just add more red now. So I'm actually using a lot more red. I'm gonna add more red, a bunch more red, a little bit of white, and then I'm just gonna mix it into that yellow. So before our ratio was a lot of yellow, a little bit of red. Now it's gonna be almost kind of even. So about half red, half yellow, and a little bit of white, and now we get this kind of nice fiery orange color. And as you can see, this is a big step up from the rest of the gradients that we did. So I'm going to show you guys a different way of blending now. So I just took that red, I put it on there, and all I'm doing now is I just wet my brush, I wash the paint off, and with a little bit of water on my brush, I'm just going to take that red and just work it, just smooth out that edge. And the reason I can do this now is because the paint underneath, there's paint underneath that, the orange is underneath it. So I can just basically paint my red, then once I have that line, I can just take my brush, clean my brush, wash it, and then take a clean brush with a little bit of water and just work on that line where the orange meets where the reddish orange meets the yellowish orange. And by just moving my brush back and forth, you can see I'm just smoothing it out a little bit, getting rid of any of those harsh lines, and creating a smooth gradient. So I'm done that. I'll give you guys a minute to finish it, and then we're going to jump to the next color.